have any timing things, so make sure you
That's
plug
okay.
in. Yeah.
I got it.
Okay, good. Because I won't see any.
Yeah, time always goes fast in the green room. That's for sure.
Sure does. We should be good, but double check. You're in.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Green Room. Today, I'm in the office by myself, and Dr. Barry is remotely tuning in on his way to his lovely wife's 60th birthday cruise. And so he's live from Immokalee. So welcome, and welcome, everybody. We have a lot of news, a lot of updates, a lot of everything coming in from Tallahassee. We have the toilet paper in the back. We may not need it.
Well, you know what? Listen, we're still mopping up, Ruta, and that would be the interesting part of the telehealth story, and we'll get to it in a moment, because literally the reason that we're going to end up hopefully achieving telehealth, not done yet, out of this legislative session is because of the brutality, quite frankly, of the session. And, you know, anybody who's been watching the Florida channel, I have your Maalox or Mylanta and your medicine for your migraine headache. Listen, it's been a tough session.
Tough session.
Yeah,
Very tough
it's been a tough session, and it's been a tough session for a lot of people.
Oh God, for a lot of rights, women's rights, LGBTQ rights, you name all the rights that were stripped away this session. Horrible.
So I was watching yesterday, I was watching the debate yesterday about the trans bathroom issue, okay, where they're literally trying to figure out a way to protect the children.
It's always for them to.
It's always about protecting the children,
because and also those drag queens are so terrible to children.
But the point is that they're allowing people to make a determination if somebody looks like they may be trans, to the extent of questioning what bathroom they go into. No, it was a bizarre debate. And quite frankly, once again, I got to give a big shout out to Kelly Skidmore, Anna Eskamani, Representative Harris, Representative Driscoll, you know, the Democrats. I mean,
Democrats still are fighting. They are.
It's a super majority. I have Republican friends up there as well. But I have to give a shout out to my Democratic friends who really have been trying to hold and stem the tide the best they can. You know,
they tried.
And it's been tough. And when you talk about protecting the children, let's talk about what is the number one
killer of children
cause of death.
We're losing them.
Gun violence.
Yet somehow that
there was another shooting in Atlanta today, or something. Rude, I'm cut out today.
Yeah, you got cut out a little bit.
No problem. And other things too. The quite frankly, every bit of legislation up there was questionable, you know, from a lot of ways. The
senseless carry, I mean, you name it, every single thing. And the thing that's interesting is they didn't, you know, you would think they would fight more for protection of our environment, sensible, affordable housing, which is a huge crisis, affordable insurance things. Instead, they're capping things out. They're just nuts. They were crazy this session.
Well, the comment was made during one of the debates. I wish we spent as much time debating the real issues that are of importance here, you know, to the citizens of Florida. So before I cut out again, let's get into the telehealth issue, because it's really, really interesting. So telehealth was dead. Ruta knows. I came into the office yesterday morning.
Very upset.
You know what, I call myself sanguine. You know, I like to use
that's a nice word.
You know what, listen, because I would love to have telehealth for my patients. It's safe, it's convenient. You can be efficient and educate your established patients. We've never felt that telehealth for new patients was appropriate, because you don't deliver that educational experience to the patient and make that bond. But for telehealth, especially in light of the storm, in light of people still in post-pandemic wearing of the mask, you know, we have debilitated patients. Parkinson's patients of ours literally fell on the way, you know, to the office the other day, you know, and his wife told me it's so hard to get him out anymore. A million reasons. But here's what happened.
Let me just backtrack a second, because we have listeners that are not from Florida. The state of Florida for telehealth to be done was an emergency order only during COVID. Outside of that, our patients have to be seen initially and then every 210 days. So what happens is during telehealth, that emergency order, we were allowed to actually see our patients for the second visit for recertifications, not having to see them face to face in person in the office. Our patients, because the state of Florida regulates us so heavily with medical, they have to have what's called qualifying conditions. Among them are, epilepsy, cancer, PTSD. So you have patients who are really, truly debilitated that cannot come physically into the office, or if they do, it's so extremely difficult. So this telehealth bill came forward into the House trying to somewhat help our patients. And so now I'll let you go. Sorry about that. I just wanted to give a backstory for everybody.
Thanks, Ruta. That's a great wrap up. People need to know that. And we've been able to do it twice, during governor's emergency order, once during COVID for an extended period of time, worked very well. And then again after Ian. But the reason I was sanguine is that in a lot of ways, I love seeing my patients. And it's a different practice when we have telehealth. And
it is, and it's a different bonding between the patient and physician.
It is. And there has been malfeasance, in the space, which is really what was holding up the bill. And listen, rumors were that the bill was being blocked by the bigger groups in the state who feared even bigger groups coming in, sharks as they are, from outside of the state. It's happened already. And we know that there's way too many patients that are in the registry illegally. But it's truly a Lazarus. And here's how it happened. So, and I was offended because of how it passed through the House with unanimous support in both committees, and then went to the House for vote. Ruta, Eric Stevens told me the exact vote yesterday. I think it was 110-5 or something like that in the House in the positive. So there was wide bipartisan support. And I want to give a big shout out to Representative Roach, who I've been working along with, as well as Bart Hirschfield and the rest of the doctors in the group, to really try to tighten up the language so that
it needed to be. It needs
to be the same doctor that you've already seen. Absolutely. That doctor needs to have seen you physically. Right.
But who's my question is though, who is gonna monitor this? Like, it's nice, like even for the language, I just read the bill now, and it does say that the initial visit has to be done in face. They're not monitoring it now. Who's gonna take control?
Well, here's the big point. So there's a couple there. So this is how it came down. We were very concerned with the malfeasance around the state and the fact that, and it was the poison pill in the bill, may still be. For the doctors, quite frankly, because it took the control over our discipline of our practice, of your and my business practice within medical cannabis, outside of the purvey of the Board of Medicine, which is how doctors have always been disciplined, of course, and gives it directly to the OMU, right? And that's dangerous. The process hasn't been, it is. We tried to amend the bill language all throughout this session to actually set up that who would be evaluating that and make sure that we had a doctor who practices medical cannabis sitting on that panel or whatever. We don't know. And that is dangerous.
It is. It's very scary territory.
It is. And there's some things you can control and some things you can't control. And as I've explained to everybody about my role in this process, is that what goes on in Tallahassee goes on in Tallahassee. It's driven by politics. It's driven by money. By money. But right. And we don't have the big money to spread around like some of the bigger lobbyists do, or some of the bigger groups do with the lobbyists and everything. But my goal was always to drive the fire truck, so to speak, from the back seat, as Kramer did in Seinfeld, if you remember him careening. And I think we've done a good job, because while we didn't get everything that we wanted out of the bill, it is tight. It does say that the doctor has to have seen you physically. It is the same doctor in that same group. You can't poach from group to group, so it's good. It's good, but it's going to change, medical cannabis if it goes through. But here's how it happened, everybody. And it's very important to know how it happened. And what I haven't told you yet, Ruta, is my humble opinion about why and how it happened. This session, which is why we started out the green room talking about the toilet paper, because they are cleaning up. What they're cleaning up here is they're cleaning up all the mess from the Pigford, the Black Farmer MMTC license case. And here's my humble opinion. with all due respect, this session was so brutal to every minority in the state, every marginalized citizen in the state.
Absolutely.
To me, this is a small cookie, a small crumble off the cookie. It's a small olive branch. Senator Rusan, thank you so much. Working along with President Pasadomo, Senate President Pasadomo, Ruta. This was a late hour effort, okay, to fix the Pigford case, okay? And we were the only bill left standing to do it.
Wow.
So we're going to benefit the medical cannabis
From the
patient, I
Pickford
believe, by getting a little cookie off that
The
crumb
Pickford.
for our patients because of this statement that I believe of bipartisanship between the Republicans and the Democrats who really wanted to deliver something. You know, quite frankly, there's politics involved. That's why I'm so comfortable and confident in believing that it probably will get through the House, because I don't think they can stiff President Pasadomo, Senate President
No, I don't
Pasadomo.
think so. If the Senate, whatever the Senate president says usually is what sticks.
But
the
it's still
thing
got to go back to the House.
House,
Right. So here's the process in Florida, everybody. So it's got to go back to the House. The bill language of the Senate bill and the House bill have to reconcile.
Yes.
So listen, there may be some issues with people not wanting to settle the Pigford case in the House. There may be some people that oppose it for various reasons. The money may get spread around now. You know, it's interesting, and I appeal to others to read closely into the wording of it. As it reads, those Pigford claimants, and once again, this is the black farmers case, and it's kind of offensive to a certain extent that the black farmers were only chiseled out one MMTC license, and you know, it's Florida, of course, and everything, but this is really trying to correct, I think, wrongs, you know, that were done there. Apparently, every Pigford licensee that didn't get a license, that didn't have any demerits on their application, I think automatically gets a license through this.
Really?
And yes, and it opens up an evaluatory process. It's interesting, and I didn't read through it closely enough to know what it has to do with the next 22 licenses that are going to be awarded here in the state, right?
Yeah.
But it's going to be very interesting, and you know, I think most things end up in court, you know. And I
But
think
the only thing is, even with the Pickford case, like if you look at it, and this is the only issue that I have. So you have the big boys out, and they've been out for 7 years now. And to try to break into a market like this, where you have the big boys like the True Leaves, even Move is up there already. Like if you have these big groups, to try to compete with them is extremely difficult. So you're still talking like a year, 2 year out for grow processing and everything. You're talking years out. So even if they're granted this, the competition level is they're going to be crushed. And so it's almost a moot point at this point, I think, for even giving them that. So maybe that's why they're reconciling with it, because I think at some point they're going to be like, well, what does it matter? They're never going to compete anyway. Like, you know what I mean? It's just
even late to the game though, Ruta, and I always remind people about this. It may seem late to the game, but it's not, because the two biggest things in cannabis still haven't happened yet. And one is the removal of Schedule 1, you know, at the national level, which is going to open up everything to the extent of research. I always say it's going to come down to a states' rights issue. The states are going to be able to determine their own programs. To that extent, it's going to be a mess, especially here in the South. But that's the first thing that's going to happen, and that's going to lead to some form of, you know, national quote unquote legalization, and every MMTC, big, small.
They'll get bought out probably by some of the larger ones. It's going to become a national, big players will come in.
Those licenses are still worth 35, 45, 50 million, who knows, you know. And the second thing that I always speak to is that we're still looking, and we will find more uses for cannabis on the medical side. And that's something that can't be forgotten, why I continue to do what I do.
I agree. The medical's not going away.
It will if we don't watch. It will if we don't fight for it. It will if we listen. Let's talk about the hemp bill too, as long as we're talking tally, and as long as we're talking toilet paper, because this is really important. Because for all intents and purposes, what came out of Tallahassee on the hemp side was they've created a legal adult use market, quite frankly, for everything except smokable flower. for everything except smokable flower, because
Mhm.
essentially with the removal of all caps on milligrams of both Delta 9 THC, which is called hemp derived, on that market here in Florida. And that's a whole nother discussion. We got to get Greg Gerdeman in,
Yeah, that's a
our
huge
professor friend, to
discussion.
discuss that one. So they are creating apparently Delta 9 from CBD, although it's so much cheaper to obtain it from other sources. But Delta 8, 10, 6. I went into a smoke shop the other day. I couldn't believe what I saw. There was HHC, THCO. These are compounds felt to be even stronger and more intoxicating.
And yet they're
And-
not, and yet they're uncontrolled in the state of Florida.
Well, they
which
are.
is
No, and the point
amazing.
is, by the removal of all the caps and limits, what they did do, and they did pass through, was packaging limits, not attractive to children, 21 and over also, for the Delta 8 products. So they did do a couple things, but you and I know it needs to be
But
done. There
still-
needs to be a state level clearinghouse where these
Yes.
products are tested and
Absolutely.
labeled.
It's a
hard to
safety issue and they've ignored
It
it.
is.
Like it
It's a
really
public
is
safety issue.
Public safety issue.
And I don't know if they're leaving it up to next year, if they're going to do something in rulemaking at the Department of Agriculture level. But the point is that we, once again, for everything but smokable cannabis flower, everything's available out there, and it's crazy, and it's
It is a
confusing to patients. There are public safety issues. It's interesting, Ruta, just on the science side, as I stand here in the casino. Just on the science side, the Delta 8 products, it's interesting, Don. I had a discussion with a science guy the other day. The Delta 9 products, when you take an edible or a gummy, they convert in the liver to an 11-hydroxy THC, which is a stronger THC for some people and lasts longer in most people. So that means that your newbies who have never used cannabis before, well, they're taking it in a route that we know is going to be troublesome because it's going to last a long time. And actually that compound that they're taking converts into the liver into something that's even stronger than what they would get if they would smoke their first joint at age 80, believe it or not. It's such an interesting scientific thing, and these patients are not being educated when they're walking, into a smoke shop, surely not the gas station, so it's just really a bizarre world right now of cannabis.
And don't you think though, like I have what I'm seeing, I don't know if you think this too, but you're going to end up like, I think we talked about it a little bit. I think physicians' offices are going to start selling it just because it's a money-making machine. It's unregulated and they're going to sell. I don't think the good physicians will, but I think a lot of groups are going to make some money off of it as well.
So there's doctor offices that sell Delta 8 as we speak, already. So, there's ethics involved. It's one of the things I talked about in the doctor group meeting that we had last night. We still are meeting every Wednesday. And I got to give a big shout out to Charles Felix and Eric Stevens. And, really a lot of the docs that meet, Melanie Bones on there, Lori Cummins, a whole bunch of Mark Hashem's joined in, and really docs are involved now. And we talk about it all the time. It's up to us to make sure that we deliver that level of excellence, right? That's going to separate us out from the, lesser practices that don't deliver that, from the gray market that's out there now, but
it is a gray market. It's
a gray market.
It's a gray market. And the only other thing that I'm surprised about is from the MMTCs that they didn't put their foot down stronger on this, because if you think about it, those large practices that are in the state that have like 20 offices, 30 offices, they start carrying their own brands of advertising THC, Delta 9, Delta 8, Delta 10 products. They can do their own markup. They don't even have to refer their patients out to an MMTC. It's a huge loophole because if you think about it, right now we were regulated that we cannot sell product. This is giving the medical offices a massive loophole to be able to sell product, which again, I think cuts into the MMTC business, which they should worry about because I'm sure there's a lot of groups who are already doing it. And if you think you're going to generate another $500,000 out of 20 sites by selling it, you're going to sell it as a business model.
Yeah, no, it's fascinating to look at it that way. We've
Mhm.
never wanted to sell a product in our
No.
office for a lot of different reasons, so that would really
But
be a
some
tough
practices
decision.
may, because if you're going to increase your
Right.
revenues by $500,000, $1 million a year, if you have 20
Sure.
sites, you're going to do it. Why not?
Yep. And you can't assume that the state, and we know the governor, there's no love loss for Trulieve and the other
No, there's
MMTCs. We know
there's
that.
none.
The governor wants more money from the program.
He
They
does.
raise the every other year rebuy-in for the MMTCs to 1.3 million, which is another
Insane.
huge thing. Going back to that Bickford
Bickford
discussion,
case, it's a barrier of entry. It is.
it is a barrier of entry.
Mhm.
So that'll be interesting. But once again, to think that there's no love lost for Trulieve or the other MMTCs, that's why, once again, we don't know what they have up their sleeve, okay, for next session.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting session next
Listen,
session.
the roller coaster ride is the roller coaster ride. What a
Yeah,
great
it
time to be leaving, for my cruise with my lovely wife,
Yeah.
because, listen, it is stressful in Tallahassee.
It is.
And, Cena Day is going to come up, we think tomorrow.
Oh, it's
And,
gonna be
who
tomorrow?
knows? I think it's tomorrow, maybe Monday, but, there's still, I think this afternoon at 4:00 is when we're expecting the cannabis bill to come up on the special order in the House this afternoon. So we'll see. Rep Roach will have a chance at that point to wrap up his bill. I'm hoping he gives a hearty shout out to the Florida Medical Cannabis Physicians Group
Which you
for
should.
assisting him with it. No, listen, I feel good about it because, like I said, this was going to happen irregardless of what it is that we
No,
were going to
absolutely. They have
do.
their own agenda and their own.
They
whatever
do.
they want
They
to have
do.
done.
So
They
at
do.
least, we had impact. And listen, the state knows about Veriheal now.
They do. At
They've
least
been
it's come up
mentioned, they've been
by
mentioning
name.
for sure, and others. And listen, there is, if you say, how is it going to be regulated and this, that, whatever, listen, I'm surely fearful of losing my recommending, capabilities for 2 years, up to 2 years, so we follow the rules. We'll continue to follow the rules. And, I think the bigger groups, who didn't necessarily want telehealth to come back to the state,
Or the out of
believe
state
me,
ones.
they'll be watching very closely the very
I just
heels of
hope
the
it's
world and
I
others.
just hope it's going to be a little bit more monitored, and I hope they do come pounding down on the Vera Hills and those players that do things illegally. Because
Listen,
right
what I
now
want
the
out of this,
regulatory arm's not there.
for sure, what I want out of this, Ruta, what I've always wanted out of this is that working group along with the OMU, right? That will allow us to be proactive instead of reactive. And if they would allow us to assist and
But do you think that's
advise,
going to change anything right now? Do you think the
we'll
bill is going
see.
to have it? I mean, I don't know
We'll
that
see.
that
I
would
mean,
be true.
we've surely opened up the appropriate doors. We know there's a couple of really important people up in Tallahassee. Senator Burton is running the whole, Senate health policy side of things right now, and others. And, we're going to stay in close touch with our representatives because I think that is where you can really make your impact. And, I think we did. And I'm
I mean, as
proud
much
of it.
as
So
we
we'll
could,
see.
no, I think this year, like I have to say, I think this year they actually did listen to the physicians a lot more than they have in the past. I really do. And I think that
Yeah,
is a
step
huge
by
positive.
step.
They have, it's a step-by-step process. Like I said, for me, the regulatory arm is the one that I'm concerned about now more than anything, just because we know we play by the rules. We always have. And I think that's what makes our practice the way our practice is and the reputation that we have. And I think when you make the phone call or you have a representative Roach asking your opinion, it's because we have a practice that does abide by the rules, and we do have a gold star bias because of that. But going forward, I just hope that, other practices want to have a gold star and not just have the bank account numbers and then, play not by the game rules and do their own thing. That's the only worry I have. So I hope the
Yeah,
OMMU, the Office of Medical Marijuana Registry, takes it seriously.
Me too. And listen, the good news is actually 1 month or so from today up in Orlando, Gene Jones, big shout out to Gene as well. Conference coming up in Orlando, the FMCEE conference, easily found. And I recommend any doctor watching today or really anybody involved in cannabis. It's a great thing. But the OMU is going to be there. And they're actually giving a session, which is great because
It's going to be very interesting. And I hope they're open to a lot of questions because I think our staff will have a million.
It depends who they send. Yeah, well, for sure, it depends who they send, but we're hoping that they send somebody fairly high level. But, listen, every crack in the door, so to speak. So,
Sure.
we know we have a lot of work yet to do. And, I want to thank everybody really out there, for getting behind, the effort. So we'll see. Nothing's done yet. Tallahassee's interesting. Rep
Tallahassee
Roach,
is
for
Tallahassee.
example,
We'll see what happens.
for sure. Listen, Rep Roach literally did not know what was going on in the Senate. That's how late acting this was. That's how overnight this was. That's what they talked about in the Senate yesterday, was how they really got together on this. So Rep Roach literally went up to ask the speaker during session, Ruta, after I asked him about it. And he said the speaker confirmed it to him.
That's funny.
I know. So you can almost watch him walk across the floor on the Florida channel,
That's
but
funny. And be like,
so
what
4 o'clock today, we'll see how it goes. But I think I'll be on my way,
You'll be
floating out on the
sailing.
waves.
What
For
time
sure.
do you guys start? When do you guys take off? When do you sail?
I think we can board at 11 or 12 or something like that. I
Oh,
think we
okay,
sail
nice.
at 4, and it's
very
Grand
nice.
Cayman and the ABC Islands, and we're going with her sister, Patty's sister, and I got all my gifts arranged, and
Nice.
60th birthdays, you got to do
It's a
the
big
right
birthday.
thing. Yeah.
It is a
Yeah.
big birthday.
Listen, I count on you guys to give me advice on all these things, so. So listen, why don't we wrap it up a little early, and we'll see what happens to that extent. Next week, we talked about it, Don. We may pull out an old green
episode
room,
with
the best
honoring
of.
Bobby Tuna,
Oh,
maybe.
yeah.
I
Yeah.
think it'd be nice because he
Listen,
did.
we've lost so many cannabis warriors over the past couple months. I hope
have.
they're on the same train, going up to heaven. But everybody from Dr. Meshulam, himself. There was a Dr. Bob Melamed that we just lost, Norm Kent, and of course Bobby Tuna. So anyway, a little bit that way. Or Ruta may bring in a guest, but it won't be me.
Yeah, we'll see.
So
I actually may bring in a guest. You know why? 2 weeks ago, I bumped into a girlfriend's daughter. She finished medical school about 3 years ago, and she's out of UCLA. She's doing addiction medicine, but she just got invited to a university. It's part of, I think, Stanford. And what they are is they're going to start researching cannabis out of Stanford. And she's she's the lead physician. So I was
awesome.
speaking, yeah.
If
So
you can grab her, that'd be awesome.
yeah,
Step
I'll
by
try
step.
to grab her because she was great to talk to. I spoke with her probably for about an hour, and we had a really awesome discussion about medical cannabis and cannabis as a whole, and the research and lack of that in the research that's needed. So if I can grab her, I will grab her, and then we'll have
It's
a
going to be
green
an
room.
exciting next 6 years, Ruta. We had Peter Grinspoon in last week, and of course, he was such a great guest. And as you discuss, what's going on in a lot of the academic centers right now. So, tip of the spear is tip of the spear. It can't wait to go forward and onward with you and everybody.
So we'll let you get back to your lovely wife. Wish her a happy birthday on behalf of the entire staff, and have a safe cruise and a lot of fun.
Oh, by the way, Patty got the greatest shirt in the world. It says 420. I'm I'm 420 in dog years. That's what it is. It's 7 times 60 equals 420. So that's that. It is easily found on Amazon, everybody.
Oh my God, that's all right. See everybody hopefully in a week or two. We'll